language are very important for mankind. Why? Because with that we can communicate each other and also we can transmit our ideas and thoughts. So when we meet in another one that maybe we don't know, we can see them, but we don't know what is going on inside their heads. And also languages were something very important in order to build big societies and also nations. For example, a nation is one important thing about nation is that they have like official languages. For example, in Mexico, the official language is Spanish. In United States, the official language is English. In French is French. In Russian is Russian, and so on. Now the question is, the language that I speak shapes the way I think? Well, some researchers says yes. Why? Well, there was this scientific that his name is Benjamin Lee Whorf that studied the Hopi people. They live in the northeast of Arizona, United States, and they speak quite different from what we are used to speak. For example, in many languages, maybe like most of them, when we speak, we change the verb in order to represent that is something that happened in the past, or is something that is happening, or is something that will happen. So we are focused more on tenses. And for tenses, I mean like present, past, or future. But for the Hopi people, they don't speak like that. For the Hopi people, they concern more about how they get information. For example, if they get information by first hand, they use a special structure. But if they get information by a third person, they use another structure. So we can see like a very different. They speak more about how do they get the information, and we speak about when, for example, in the present or in the past or in the future. And also we can say that genders affect how we think about things. For example, in French, German, and Spanish exist genders, for example, masculine and feminine. And also in German exists this one that doesn't exist in Spanish, that is the Neutum. That is a gender it is not female or male, feminine or masculine. But how do this affect how we perceive things? Okay, uh, there are words that in a language is masculine, but when we change that language from another, they change also their gender. For example, the word bridge. Bridge in Spanish is masculine, but in German is feminine. How does this affect how we perceive a bridge? Okay, German speakers were told to describe a bridge. What this is something particular is that they use adjectives to describe more like feminine things, for example, elegant and beautiful. And for Spanish speakers that were told to describe a bridge also, they use another kind of adjectives that are more like masculine adjectives like strong or long. So here we can see that for German speakers, bridge is a feminine thing, like a woman. But for the Spanish speakers, a bridge is something that is masculine, something that is a male. And also this affects when we try to learn a new language. For example, me as a Spanish speaker trying to learn French was quite difficult because some words have a different gender. For example, the word car. Car in Spanish is masculine, but in French is feminine. So when you were told that car in French is feminine, it was like, hey, that doesn't sound good because for me as a Spanish speaker it was obvious that a car is something masculine, but also for a French people a car is something that is feminine and is obvious. So when you're trying to speak a new language and these things happens that the gender change from one language to another, it's kind of difficult. So and also it happens in other languages. And how we can say that the gender of some nouns and some words can affect how we perceive things? Well, we can see it if we are able to go to a museum. Why? Because many of the painters that we can see there could be representations of some things. For example, representation about death, about angels, about fear, about I don't know, maybe wine. But there's something that it is very interesting. It's that the representations have variations because for maybe in an speaker the death in it could be represented as a male, but also in other cultures, in other languages that are spoken, the same concept of death are represented as a woman. And also, for example, wine could be a man in some pictures, but in some other pictures it could be represented as a female. One more thing about how the language that we speak change the way we perceive things is about time and space. How? Okay, if we put like a progress of images that show us how maybe a tomato is getting rotten, it could be represented in the for us like the traditional way in horizontal. For example, being from left to right or right to left, but always in horizontal like this. It could be like here in this space, the tomato is fresh, but in this other place, the tomato is already rotten. So we can see that the development of time going in this way, in a horizontal way. But if we ask the same for people that speak different, for example, a Chinese Mandarin speaker, it could be different. Why? Because how they perceive things, well, how they perceive the time is quite different from us. The time for them is represented in a vertical way. I mean, from this way. That's something that is weird because for them, if we place the same progress of images of the tomato getting rotten in the horizontal way, they will not get it. Why? Because they're not, for them this weird, this is strange. But for us it is very clear. But if we put it for them in this place like up downs, they will say, oh, now I see. In the top, the tomato is fresh, but if we are going to below and below and below, the tomato is getting rotten. So for them, that's how they perceive the time in space. And we can also do like a little experiment for them. For example, we can say like this place here is today. Where will be tomorrow? For us that speak Spanish or English or Occidental culture, we could say like here is today and tomorrow is here and yesterday is here. But if we ask the same for a Chinese Mandarin speaker, they will say something like this: here is today, where is tomorrow? For them, tomorrow could be here, upwards, and yesterday will be here in the down part. Something that it is important or interesting about how the language we speak changes the way we think is that not only linguistics are concerned about, for example, also psychologists and also neuroscientists. To see how they are involved in this research, let's see how people perceive colors. For Greek people, there exists a great variety for describe colors. For example, they have these two words, galasio and ble. For them, galasio means light blue and ble means dark blue. But in English, it just exists one blue, that is just blue. So for them, if they were told to see a progression of colors and see a light blue getting faded, they would notice immediately that something is happening. But for a Spanish speaker or English speaker, that for them there is just one concept of blue, they wouldn't see this variation. Also, there is something different about how people perceive things. For example, the Himba people and Berimo people that lives in Papua New Guinea, they perceive colors in a different way. Why? Because there is a great difference. For us, we have a plain variety of how to describe colors, for example, red, blue, or green, yellow. We have this concept, but for them, they just exist two concepts, hot colors and cold colors. So for them, cold colors are like blue and black. It is something really bizarre for us because obviously there is a great difference between black and blue, but for them there are no difference because there is just like cold colors. And also for hot colors, they are white and yellow. And also we can see a great difference between white and yellow, but for them there are no difference because they don't have this concept of colors, so they just have two concepts of colors, that is cold and hot colors. As we can see throughout these examples, we can say that the language we speak changes the way we think. And with this statement, we can say that our way of living is very related with the language, and language also is very related with culture. So the culture depends on language, and also language depends on culture. So both of them are evolving according to the needs of the community.